we're 1 1/3 activities in, and I can already see what you're trying to do with your writing. Application Renovation Season 5. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. We're doing a take 2 here. Our recording failed a couple minutes in. So we're going to have a repeat conversation. For those watching, they don't know any difference, but it's fun for us. So as we look at your application here, right, the goal is to potentially take my eyeballs, look at it, and go, maybe what went wrong, right? This is all me just pondering, having some big hypothesis about what's keeping you out of medical school. If you could think about what's keeping you out, what do you think it is?
Yeah, looking back, I think it could have been my writing. I don't know if I conveyed well enough why I want to be a doctor and that I want to badly enough. Mm-hmm. I think all my extracurriculars were okay. My scores were okay. So I think it might have come down to my writing.
Okay. And this was first application cycle?
Yes.
How many interviews?
2 interviews. I had one November that I got waitlisted, and then a late interview in March.
Okay, so later interviews, very interesting, potentially why they were later interviews. And then we're going to take a look at your AMCAS application. Did you submit a COMIS, TMDSAS, or just AMCAS?
Just AMCAS.
Okay, all right. Any questions before we jump in?
Let's go. Let's get into it.
All right, so as we take a look at your application, the first thing always is... when you submitted early. Great job. So not an issue with submission timing. You were verified just a week or so later. So great job with timing your application. Did you feel rushed to submit, or did you start early?
No, I started working on it in January.
Okay.
So I felt pretty good about that.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, I'd rather you not be rushed and submit a couple weeks later than rush just to submit that first day or two. All right, speak a couple languages in some varying capacity, not marking yourself as disadvantaged. The AAMC is categorizing you as disadvantaged based on typically the parent education level, which we have redacted out. Not first generation, no big red flags, which is good, and no military service. All right, so we take a look at grades as we go through. So you have a couple... early dual enrollment courses. Thankfully, you didn't screw those up. So many students are like, dual enrollment, sure, and then you just screw around and get Fs, and that's not good. We did struggle early here with Gen Chem 1. What happened there?
I was kind of going through the growing pains of college. I think it was my second semester of college. So just making a support group it was difficult to focus on my school. I didn't have too many friends there, so...
Okay. So typical transition issues.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, good. And you can see, right, just glancing at it, that most of your grades are good, but a lot of it is non-science stuff. So what did you major in?
Molecular biology, but I did a French minor.
Okay, so that's where the language stuff is coming in. Awesome.
Yeah, so I took a lot of French classes.
Okay. And so you can see here, lots of A's. You did improve Gen Chem 2. And then as we keep going, more A's, and then a string of B's, and then more A's again, with kind of this mix of, what is it? You have some non-science, some science, some non-science. So really big mix. And it's interesting as we look at your kind of GPA breakdown here, specifically your science, your BCPM, for those watching, biology is B, chemistry, physics, and math. I don't know if I explained that enough, but I'll explain it there. So again, you did have a couple of high school dual enrollment. Those are over here under all other. But freshman, GPA 314, that C really dragged you down a little bit. But then a decent upward trend, right? 373, 363, or 366, a little bit of a dip, and then 382. So if we were to look at kind of your last... 55 credits here, it's roughly, a 3.7 maybe, if we were to try to average it all out, just glancing at it, and then a 3.61 overall. So not the sexiest science GPA, not terrible, decent upward trend, so shouldn't close too many doors for you, right? That's how I like to think about this. If we look at the rest of your stuff, you are a strong non-science student, which is great. I always wonder, and it's impossible to know what the answer is, if there are calculations potentially that schools are doing going, they're a really strong non-science student and they struggle a little bit with sciences. Does that tell us anything? Like, is there any data about that? Just random thoughts that I have. Those are shower thoughts of like, I wonder if they have those things. But you hopefully eased some concerns with a really strong MCAT score. My assumption is your non-science education and how strong you were there probably really helped with your ability to do well in the MCAT because it's a reading test, right? So really strong MCAT score. I don't like to think of things of like, your MCAT score balanced out your GPA, but I'm sure it doesn't hurt, right? A higher MCAT score always helps. We do have a preview score on here, which is new for this cycle or last 2 cycles, with a 4. So not the best, 41st percentile. I don't think this is keeping you out of med school. I doubt med schools are actually using this information yet in terms of admissions decisions, but we'll see. It's just another data point. All right, let's keep looking here. And as we go into your activities, we start to see some clinical experience, which is great. So volunteer medical assistant, you did it from August 21 to May 22, 250 hours. And then you have a little bit of a description here of what this actually does. And so, hey, we provide medical services to undocumented patients. And you're talking about here challenges of undocumented and non-English speaking patients. English should be capitalized here. It's just stupid minor stuff. And then, so most of this is just a general, hey, here's what this clinic is. But there's not a lot of here's who I am, right? My general stance is who are you? That's what the activity section is for. Who are you in each of these individual activities? Not who are you as a future physician, not what skills are you learning to be a physician, but just who are you in this moment, right? And so we see here, right, since most people were so unfamiliar with the doctor, we're talking about them. In addition to treating any ailments and illnesses, the longer 60 minutes appointments, we're talking about, in general, the clinic setup, all right? So this whole thing has nothing to do about you, right? Okay. So we get to paid medical assistant and shift lead. You have some overlapping time here with the previous one, and you have future dates. So it's great. This looks like a full-time job, right? 2,000 hours roughly. So you're basically full-time. And we have a most meaningful as well. So you get 700 characters for the description up here, and 1325 for the most meaningful essay, and just general information for those watching. Do not treat these as one giant essay. They are 2 separate essays. So you talk here, after getting my EMT certification, I decided to work in a rural, privately owned urgent care and family practice so I could spend more time learning from physicians. Okay, great, right? General statement, maybe don't need it, but it's just setting us up for, hey, here's who I am, why I'm doing this. I was drawn to the clinic because of the many hours I spent running and biking on the trails in the area. Doesn't necessarily compute for me. Like, what is that? What does one have to do with the other? My connection to the community expanded as I got to know our patients and become invested in the unique challenges they face. So right off the bat, I'm 1 1/3 activities in, and I can already potentially, right? I like to come at these in a very hyperbolic way, a very critical and I can't think of the right word off the top of my head. I can't think of the word. Anyway, I like to come and think of these in a very, very pointed way, right? Very cynical way. That's the word I was trying to think of. And so we're 1 1/3 activities in, and I can already see what you're trying to do with your writing. Tell me what you are trying to do with your writing, and then I'll tell you what I think you're trying to do.
Yeah, thinking back, I think I was trying to make it personal. So I think like with the running and biking, I was trying to show like the things that I enjoy doing and how I got into it.
Yeah.
So instead of like showing what I was doing and what it meant to me, I think I was just trying to explain like why I was doing it.
Yeah. I'll call cap on that. what all the kids are saying these days, right? Fake news. If you look at your writing, what are you focused on? Undocumented patients, non-English speaking, mistrust in medicine, right? These people so unfamiliar with the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Drawn to this clinic because of the many hours I spent running in the area, the community, unique challenges they face.
Mm-hmm.
You are trying, it seems like, again, I come at it from this point of view, so it's a biased point of view, but this is what I think you're trying to do. You're trying to paint a very specific picture of, hey, look at how culturally aware I am of the medical disparities that this community faces. It seems a little bit over the top.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think I probably overdid it a little bit. I think for the free clinic, I did get involved in that because of the disparities, but I think I could have, come at it differently.
Yeah, potentially, right? And I'm not saying like don't go volunteer at a free clinic because it's going to look like trash. What I'm saying is how you potentially communicate that in your application, in your interviews, is just a little bit shifted point of view, again, away from, ooh, look at how amazing I am, look at how I'm helping the underserved, look at how much I understand the non-English speaking population. And again, just show me who you are versus how you're writing it is, I want to show you how much I understand about this population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Just a little bit of shift of perspective there. All right. So we keep going. One particular devastating wildfire, not only did we address injuries, but we helped coordinate resources for temporary housing. So this is an interesting thing that students often do when they're writing. They talk about we, right? It's obvious, I think, for 99% of people that when you are in a setting with other people, it's we. I want you to focus on you. Again, the goal for me for the activities section is for me to understand who you are. Write in terms of, I did this, I impacted this situation. Here's a story where I interacted with whoever, whatever you're trying to get across here. Not we. We're not French here, Mr. French minor. All right. One day, a young girl came in with her mother. Okay, so now we're getting into a little bit of storytelling. Crying so loudly, I walked up to the front, talked with her mother. So you're getting into this little anecdote. Massive burn on her back from hand, and the back of her hand from hot oil. And so you have this situation where you're kind of explaining what's going on. You're talking about the receptionist here. I don't know why we're talking about the receptionist. We don't need that information. And then, hey, I'm going to tell the receptionist, hold on a minute. I go talk to the clinic manager. So it's just like step by step by step. And we can get potentially a little bit more better showing here to show who you are versus this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened. And then we keep going. You explain the situation. They simply hand the decision over to me. Okay. I was shift lead. It was my responsibility to make these tough calls. So a little bit of a humble brag here, a little bit of ooh, look at me, I'm in charge, I'm the boss. I told the mother and daughter that we could see them free of charge. It was such a rewarding experience. Okay, great. So this is a clinical experience, right? You marked it as a clinical experience. But what you're showing me here has nothing to do with clinical stuff. Okay, this is admin related. Hey, I'm making admin decisions. So a little bit of a distraction, potentially. California International Marathon. So you have a hobby on here, which is great. So you're running a marathon. Let's see if you do a classic thing that people like to do here and talk about skills. So endurance activities, always been fun outlet for me. Run 10 miles for fun. You're crazy. Okay. In college, I would run with friends. A gap year, became serious about running. Training started in May for the race in December. So that's what you have kind of here, May and June. Structured training plan, local trail running groups that you joined, friends I made, the 20-mile training runs, much more enjoyable. You loved meeting new people. We pushed each other to get better. I was proud to have completed my first marathon in a time of 3 hours and 30 minutes. Great job. Again, I don't really see you here. I see that you like to run for fun. And then like I created structured training plans, long run intervals, recovery days, like super technical stuff. Like I don't need to know about that.
Yeah.
And then you get in here a little bit of friends and meeting new people. And so is there this like, hey, I'm really good team player and working together with other people? It'd be interesting to think about why you wrote those things. So not terrible. Could have potentially highlighted. I don't see much passion here. It's just like, I created structured training plans. Okay. Not terrible, but okay. COVID-19 contract tracer for CU Boulder. So you did that for a few months here at the start of the pandemic, or near the start. And then, hey, you've been exposed to COVID-19. Contact tracer probably doesn't need any sort of description in terms of what is it. I think most people would understand what it is at this point. August 2020, still a lot of unknown. Why do you keep calling me? So someone at the party contacted COVID. She was exposed. And talking about safety procedures, et cetera, et cetera. So you're wrapping up the call, expressed her gratitude. This is just a general statement that I make. I try to have students stay away from gratitude and thanks and stuff. That's just a personal thing for me. There are better things to focus on than, ooh, they thanked me. With each one of these conversations, I learned how to better deliver this unfortunate news. So again, I would rather see, instead of, hey, I'm learning these skills, I'd rather see kind of what did it mean to you, right? What did it mean to you to have these conversations, to potentially ease someone's concerns, to help them understand what's next, not necessarily in terms of what are medical schools going to want me to take away from this, but just what did it mean to you personally? Right? Again, trying to understand as much as possible who you are in each of these situations, not who you think I want you to be. Bouldering club. So you had a climbing team becoming popular. Obviously, Boulder is known for bouldering. So much so that over 100 people had signed up to be on the team. Funding, logistics, competitions only could support 40 climbers. To eliminate the other 60 seems a little harsh. Like, we're going to eliminate you. We were forced to have tryouts based on skill and effort. It felt wrong to exclude. So here's where, right, we get a little bit of like, I'm gonna play to what I think you want, right?
Yeah.
Does it feel wrong to exclude people? No, it's sports. We exclude people all the time, right? So it doesn't seem authentic to read that. As I was given the opportunity to join the team with no experience. Okay. So this is an interesting statement as we finish that sentence. It felt wrong to exclude these other people when I was able to join with no experience. How do you explain that? You got some nepotism going on?
No, I think I should have added one more sentence. I had joined like 3 years earlier when there weren't that many people on the team. But by the time they started having tryouts, I was already on the team for 3 years. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that statement just is weird by itself. So without the rest of the context. And something I've been trying to explain more lately is remembering that this application, as you submit it, is the only context these people have until they can interview you, assuming they want to do that. And so if you can go through sentence by sentence, like I am kind of just skimming through these, and I go, what does this mean? I don't get it as it's written here, then you'll understand, oh yeah, right? That doesn't make sense without this extra bit of context. So maybe I shouldn't put it because I don't really have room to explain the context because I only have 700 characters, etc. The team taught me the ropes and supported me as I learned. Okay, again, the goal is who are you, not the team supported me. Myself and 2 other teammates started the CU Bouldering Club. Okay, I would have loved to understand that much earlier, right? The hair club for men commercials, not only am I a client or not only am I the president, I'm a client, right? All I could see here is that you were on this climbing team. And then down here, you're like, hey, me and 2 other teammates started this. Now you do have it listed as leadership. Nothing here really says that you're leading anything, okay? Potentially leadership is co-founder. of this, right? Of the bouldering club.
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably rename this co-founder CU Bouldering Club, and then move this much earlier, and then potentially talk about leadership stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, leadership potentially. Now this makes a little bit more sense because you're a leader and not just another team member. Now it's like, hey, I have to make the hard decision. Not that it's wrong to exclude people, but as a leader, I do have to make this tough decision of picking who's going to be on the team. And how do I go about doing that? How do we do it fairly with equity and all that fun stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now it's a completely different conversation. 2019 to 2020, a few months here, 600 hours, working with other undergraduates to develop an animal model. So again, this kind of focus away from you onto other people. Okay? I want to know about you. Myself and another undergraduate, other people. Yeah. Okay. We created this. All right. Lab was shut down due to COVID. Granted $3,000 in funding to conduct a lit review examining the relationship between cytokine expression and disease progression. Great. I would love to understand potentially maybe a little bit more. You have this animal model for MS. I would love to know, like, what is the consequence of this research? What are you hoping to do with it? Are you hoping to cure MS? Are you trying to find a cause of MS to potentially prevent it? What patient population are you hoping to impact? Those are interesting things to think about. Because as a reader, I can potentially connect with it a little bit more because now I can picture a population of people instead of just going, oh, I'm going to try to examine the relationship between cytokine expression and disease progression. Mm-hmm. Right. And then, like, what's the goal of doing that? Learning about molecular bio intrigued me about being able to apply this to overcome disease. This was a student-led project, took part in every task in the lab. You read review papers, ran control studies, so all of the general job duties, not memorizing from textbooks. Okay? My partner and I sulked back to my professor's office. Again, this focus on others. And then, right, you work to develop stuff, experiment failed, it happens, encourage us to keep reading papers, all that fun stuff. And so we get to the conclusion here. We eventually were able to fix the problem, run through controlled trials so that we were ready to start collecting data. A little typo there. I learned about perseverance, organization, and tenacity it takes to research. So again, reflection-wise. So at the beginning you said, hey, your writing's not horrible. It's not great because, again, I don't really see enough of you. You're adding in these other people a lot of the times. And then the reflection here, I learned about perseverance, organization, and tenacity. And again, very common for students to create this list of skills, traits, etc. that they think doctors have. And then I'm going to show you, Mr. Reader, Mrs. Reader, Dr. Reader, that I have these skills. I have these traits. Mm-hmm. Versus, this is the most meaningful, right? Versus, this is what it meant to me. This is why it was meaningful to me in my life. The only way that I can take this is you thought it was meaningful because it taught you skills. I want to know why it's meaningful to you as a human being. Just, again, a little bit of a shift in perspective. That ideally is what I think connects human to human. Right? That's where we get more of that connection. Science summer camp instructor. So a couple months, 300 hours here. Each week began with a bucket of props and the task of creating lesson plans, blah, blah, blah. Typical means of redirecting were not working. So you had, you come into this one specific anecdote here of one student. Give the student a name, right? Names are always a little bit more connecting. Hey, one week, Todd was causing a particular amount of trouble, right? I could tell there was a deeper reason for her outbreaks. Okay, Toadette in this case. Over the course of the week, we continued to talk. She eventually opened up about her unstable household. Great, so you get into this. You could see the weight lifted off her shoulders. It was extremely rewarding to gain her trust and hopefully make an impact on the child's mental health and well-being. That's a much better reflection because it's focused on what it meant to you and not, it was extremely rewarding to gain communication skills and practice my compassion, right? Yeah. See a little bit of a difference there. Again, I have the same thing with trust as I do with gratitude and thanks. I generally like to just stay away from it as a focus. That's just a more personal thing and not necessarily a general recommendation for everything to make it better. There with care, volunteer food prep. Okay, so got community service, not medical, clinical. So providing meals and goodie bags for families with children who have chronic or life-threatening illnesses. Cook some crock-pot meals, love it. Growing up with a mom who is a chef, awesome. Cooking was how we showed love and compassion. Great, I can see you here, right? You see this? I see you. I can picture little you in your home with mom cooking stuff and like, here's some hot soup, honey. I'm sorry you're sick. That's where I want students to go with writing. Comforting family and friends also through that as well. So you're drawn to the organization. Given my own history of severe food allergies, I'm well acquainted with having to cook on a restricted diet. So again, this is a little bit out of place, it seems like, because none of what you have here talks about food allergies. And then you're like, hey, I have a history of severe food allergies, and that's why I'm drawn to this. So just at a glance, it doesn't, again, make a lot of sense of like, you're cooking for families with children who have chronic or life-threatening illnesses, not really bad allergies, and you're drawn given your own history. So that connection just seems a little bit weird. Well acquainted when having to cook on a restricted diet. Again, right? Cooking on a restricted diet doesn't equate to having chronic or life-threatening illness. So just as weird. Meat, carrots, onions, all that good stuff. Good. Okay. So again, good reflection. Not about skills, not about anything. It's just, this is why it was important to me. We got shadowing. So shadowing ended in August of 2019. That's a little bit of a red flag with no recent shadowing. Why nothing recent?
I went back to school in Colorado. So all these people I shadowed with were in California. So I went back to school for the semester and then COVID happened. Okay. And then I started working as a medical assistant. So maybe I should have shadowed when I was working there, but I kind of felt like I was working with the doctors already.
Yeah. Shadowing is very important. Again, out of context with no ability to have a conversation with you. All I see is that you did your shadowing, you got your 76 hours. Check, I'm done. Paid employment, climbing wall instructor monitor, 285 hours. So just some more stuff. I won't nitpick these ones as we go through. EMS club. So this is interesting. You have it as an extracurricular activity. I'm wondering, as we look here, you join EMS club, sharpening skills, weekly continuing education, volunteered at a local fundraiser, bike event with another EMT club member. Are you working as an EMT here? Like,
I only did once at that volunteer fundraiser. It was more just like weekly education classes. And continuing credits.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were just a member. You weren't no leadership or anything. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Field trip, after school, preschool volunteer. So Thorn Nature taught field trips and after school programs, teaching especially energetic groups, second graders, and just a reflection here. I felt joy to help these kids find a glimmer of peace in their hectic lives, right? Just a nice, authentic takeaway reflection. Climbing team. So here's where a lot of time was spent. Climbing. So that's great. So I'd be interested to look more specifically here in your most meaningful. Struggling freshman in college, you joined the climbing team with the hopes of making friends, staying active, passion to the sport, and commitment to the team grew. Worked your way up the ranks, top 10 climbers on the team. You spent hours and hours with my teammates training in the climbing gym and on the rock wall outside in the canyon. Realized that the team became my primary community in college. You have here was a natural progression to be elected as the community director on the board. The team only had 30 people, By my last year, we had grown so much, we were now having tryouts with over 100 people, one of the top teams in the country. The Wall Street Journal wrote an article about our accomplishments. Wonderful. So again, you have it as intercollegiate athletics, which I think is appropriate. You kind of bury some leadership in here a little bit. And so it doesn't really have a main focus. There's just a lot of stuff that actually just looks like a repeat of the climbing club, the bouldering club. And so potentially looking if there's a different angle, a different thing you may want to show here, because it looks a lot similar to the other one. Mm-hmm. So is there potentially a different thing to look at it from? Again, the takeaway, the team taught me about the importance of community both in and outside the gym. A little generic, doesn't seem as authentic as some of the other ones. So you have guitar here, 2017, 2022, 1,000 hours, anticipated dates, still practicing some guitar. Over the course of 2 years, I watched him progress from basic chords to knowing the entire Hotel California solo, then to teaching me lessons on how to play the blues. All right, so you're talking about this other person who you're practicing with, playing with.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So initial thoughts looking at your activities. You have shadowing. Great. Last time was 2019, at least officially that you have written here. Your 2 clinical experiences that you have at the top are this first one where you're a volunteer medical assistant, and you have this kind of thought process here of really focusing on the clinic and the people and not you. So I don't understand who you are. Okay. And then you have this next one, which is kind of the bigger clinical experience. And again, you're focused on this administrative role, leadership role, and not necessarily, again, helping me understand who you are in this clinical setting. Yeah, mm-hmm. It's great that you took a lead and you're like, hey, we'll see you free of charge. That's wonderful. That's very generous of you. And I would like to, again, see a little bit more of you. So the 2 big clinical experiences are lacking who you are. Mm-hmm. I get to see a little bit more of you in some of your later activities that are actually the non-clinical ones, where it's like, hey, this cooking one, your food prep, it was rewarding to do this for families. You have this, where was the next one, right? I felt joy to help these kids find a glimmer of peace in their hectic lives. That is a little bit more, I think, to me, authentic from who you are. Probably because you were sitting there writing going, oh, how do I tie this to medicine? I'm not sure what skills I gained here, which I think make it better because you're not trying to force that narrative. Mm-hmm. Then we keep going through here, again, kind of a really good one that could have been, and it was a lot of repeated information in this most meaningful. So I get to the end, I'm like, okay, I can see what you've been doing. You have a good amount of activities. I see how well-rounded you are, non-clinical, clinical, research, guitar, food prep, mom's a chef. So I get to see a little bit of who you are, but I don't get to really understand kind of who you are through your writing. So that's potentially when you mention, hey, there might be a little bit of a barrier. And then potentially shadowing being from 2019 is maybe another potential issue. The other thing quickly that I want to potentially point out is you talked here, this medical assistant shift lead. Mm-hmm. And you have here, you're working in this rural, privately owned urgent care family practice, more time learning from physicians. I'm trying to see if I glanced through this before. As a rural practice, people come to us for an array of problems. So you're talking about the patients here. After one particular devastating wildfire, not only do we address injuries, we helped coordinate resources for temporary housing. Again, this we thing, I'm not sure what you're doing here. Mm-hmm. And then this experience is like, hey, I'm an admin decision maker. So I wonder potentially if people saw this, read this, and said, this is an admin job
Mm.
and
Okay.
not a medical clinical job based on the focus of your writing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Potentially. I don't know, right? Again, the only context I have as a reviewer after you submit your application is what's in front of me. And looking at this, I don't see anywhere where you said, as a medical assistant, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. 10% of my time is shift lead doing X, Y, and Z, right? Maybe you need a sentence in there to really help explain. I'm mostly a medical assistant, and I also do these other things as well. All right, we keep going. So some potential question marks from your activities. And then we get to your personal statement. Loud, muffled chaos of supported cheers surround me as we approach the 500-meter mark. Go, 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 the noise, the people, except everything except for the coveted finish line is a blur as I rub elbows with the guys next to me. So a little bit of a hook going on. I would probably say that I've heard numerous admissions committee members, deans and directors of admissions, start to say, hey, we're kind of getting tired of these openings. If it is there for a reason, great. If it's there just to have a hook, let's rethink it.
Okay.
So right off the bat, I'm like, what am I reading? What's going on? You stand up on your bike and start to sprint. You stand up on my bike and start to sprint. Okay. Top speed of 35 miles an hour. As suddenly as it started, everything comes to a halt as I lose control and hurtle off my bike towards the pavement. All right. Cheek is pressed against the pebble-coated tarmac of Laguna Seca. All right. For what feels like hours, I lay there as my heart races. 2 EMTs bring me and my broken bike to the medical tent, keenly aware of the time as they use their plastic brush to scrape out the pebbles lodged in my skin. That is not fun. The shin, the hip, then my elbow. I'm grateful for the 2 EMTs who take care of me amidst the chaos. I don't need to ask for anything. They know exactly what needs to happen and how to care for me. So I'm like, great. I get to the end of this. Why am I reading this? That's the question, right? So we have to go to the next paragraph. Hopefully we get an answer. Inspired by my encounter with the EMTs, I become involved in a sports medicine occupational program where I spent my senior year in high school learning about physical therapy. Okay. Why physical therapy? It seems like a weird connection.
Oh, at the time, that's what I was interested in, like sports injuries and physical therapy. So I think this was kind of my start of my interest into medicine.
Okay.
I explored this route a little bit, and that's how it led me to wanting to go to medical school.
Okay. So potentially could have explained those connections a little bit better. What did it mean, right? Inspired by my encounter. You kind of do a 1-2 skip a few here of like, I'm not really going to tell you about what it was that inspired me. I'm just going to say it inspired me.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd love to see what it was. What was it about that experience that inspired you? And then sports medicine occupational program. Do we really need to know that specifically? Or can we talk in general about exploring physical therapy because of X, Y, or Z? So maybe a little bit too in the weeds here, right? I took this class. Again, we don't really need to know specifically about classes and all the specifics. Don't need to know what you're majoring in, all this stuff that is a little bit maybe too far in the weeds. Mm-hmm. So during college, you started to see an allergist who identified over 30 food items you were allergic to. That's fun. Since childhood, I had struggled with a range of chronic symptoms. After years of injections and appointments, the doctor had helped me get rid of almost all my allergies. It was here I began to connect all the knowledge I was learning in class to the practical applications of medicine. I don't think you need this paragraph at all. Mm-hmm. Right? This is basically, I like science, I like learning science, and ooh, look, I finally understand that science gets applied as a physician. To further explore the various avenues in healthcare, you took a class becoming EMT certified. On one of my ride-alongs, we responded to a motorcycle crash, 5 p.m. in Stockton during rush hour. So you're arriving on the scene. The experienced EMTs handled the medical care, so I focused on comforting the patient. I asked him, again, give him a name. It's connect much more with the writing if the person has a name. We arrived at the hospital. He was smiling and talkative. We transitioned into the trauma bay. So again, this we writing, I want to see who you are. You watch the medical team descend on him, functioning as a cohesive unit. This is kind of cliche stuff that students talk about of the doctor's like the maestro. Oh, look, the orchestra. Yes, I didn't even read it yet, and I knew it was coming. The orchestra, right? The maestro, the conductor. I don't know how many times I can tell you, like thousands. I've seen it thousands of times where students use this way cliched metaphor of what a doctor is, or an analogy, whatever. So you have this example here. She was the person the other team members went to for answers. So you're setting up this leadership thing, right? This conductor, she's the person people are going to. Instead of going to work as an EMT, I started working in a clinic as a medical assistant where I can learn more about what a physician does. So my question is, you became an EMT to explore avenues in healthcare. How true is that statement in terms of, I knew I wanted to be a doctor then, and so I became an EMT?
I'd say about 50-50. I didn't know then. I had an idea that I wanted to.
Okay.
But I was really considering like a lot of different things in healthcare as well.
So it is a more true statement. So then you have here this connection of, again, this doctor, the orchestra, conductor, but you don't really say, hey, I want to see what that's like for me. You just say, I saw this happen, and so now I want to be a medical assistant, without really stating why you made that decision, other than you want to learn more about what a physician does. So maybe explore that a little bit more. So medical assistant, clinic, small town. You hear various confessions for patients, lack of trust and infrequent visits to doctors. What's the goal of putting that?
I think it was just to set a background of like what type of patients were coming to us. I think I was just trying to like set a background for this next patient for like why he never came in and saw us sooner.
So you have George here. So you use a name here. I would recommend using some quotes around the first time you use a name, just to say, hey, this is a pseudonym. Complaint of a small cut on his foot he got from work. He keeps saying, use past tense. It's easier to read in these in this context.
Okay.
Just give me a Band-Aid and I'll get out of here. Like farmers and like field workers are the toughest people I think in the world. I saw Twitter recently where a physician posted with permission a broken ankle of a farmer. the comment was basically, hey, this person's been walking around with a painful ankle for like 4 days and they just wanted some pain meds so they can get back to work. And she's like, guess the occupation. And everyone's like, farmer. All right. So you take him to the exam room, take off his shoe, see a massive ulcer. So most likely a diabetic ulcer, which you got here. Prick his finger, A1C, numbers the highest you've seen. What was it? Do you remember? Like 12, 13?
Yeah, I think it was like 12.7.
Yeah. It gets high. I immediately go to alert the doctor, diagnoses him with uncontrolled diabetes and a stage 3 foot ulcer, diabetic foot ulcer. So just an hour ago, he didn't know what diabetes was. Now he thinks, now he has to think about the possibility of an amputation. So you're the medical assistant. You do not know the answer to the questions. You run back to the doctor, find an answer, and relay to him. It soon becomes apparent to me that he needs compassion and empathy again. So focus on those skills instead of just what it means to you, the emotion behind things. I want to know more so that I can coordinate his care in addition to providing compassion through the process. So this is a very common kind of takeaway that students have is like, hey, I need to know more. I want to know more. What I want you to try to focus on potentially, or think about focusing on, is what does that knowledge give you? So instead of saying, hey, I want more knowledge, being able to write about the impact that the knowledge has on this patient and potential future patients, and why that's motivating you to become a physician. Being able to reflect a little bit deeper there. So the two things that I've been recommending students stay away from is knowing more and being able to do more, right? So I wasn't able to do a lot is a very common kind of reflective statement. So I remembered what it felt like to be in the medical tent with the EMTs and to help George when he had questions. Gaining the technical knowledge to be a physician is exciting, but it's also the personal contact with the patients that encourage me. My interest in medicine began from my bike crashes, grew with my passion for science, and solidified as I understood medicine as much about personal connections than anything else. So I would love to see a lot more aspirational stuff here. Like, what do you hope to accomplish as a physician? Okay. So that was a big recap statement. If we look at your application, you did apply to a ton of schools. How many secondaries did you complete?
I think 27.
Okay, so you completed almost all of them.
Yeah.
So BU, Rosalind Franklin, Columbia, these are all private. Drexel, Duke, Emory, Geisel, GW, Sinai, Kaiser, Keck. So all private. Really big names here. You do have University of Vermont, which is a public school, but I think they're very out-of-state friendly because Vermont's a small state. Rush, Thomas Jefferson, Stanford, Brown, all the UC schools, Pritzker, Colorado, which is public but has big out-of-state, or doesn't have a strong in-state bias, and you have ties to the state. Miami is private. So almost all private schools, and then all of your state schools as well. Again, I think probably, as you mentioned, right, your writing being a big thing, not really helping the reader understand who you are. A big question mark about your quote-unquote clinical experience as the shift lead. Is it actually more admin leadership experience and not clinical experience? Not being able to understand that really easily from your writing. And then the potential lack of shadowing being a question of like, hey, what's going on here? And again, yes, you're in a clinical setting, theoretically, as the shift lead medical assistant. But I think it's just so easy for medical schools to be able to go, what has been categorized as shadowing? When was the last time you've done it? Oh, it's been 3 years now, 4 years now. That's going to be an issue.
Do you think my school list was an issue that I applied to so many private schools? Or
No, I don't think so, because private schools are typically the ones that don't have in-state bias. And so as a California resident, I think it works perfectly fine. I would have loved to see my alma mater, New York Medical College, on there, but you didn't put it on there. But yeah, I mean, you have a lot of big heavy hitter schools on here, right? I don't typically think of schools in terms of tiers, but these are big name schools that have a lot of competition just because of the name.
So yeah, I definitely think it came down to my writing and the shadowing, like you said.
Yeah, potentially looking at expanding the school list a little bit or taking off some of the bigger heavy hitter names and expanding. Like New York Medical College is a great one. we call it the University of California, New York, or University of California, Westchester, because like half the class is from California. And that's still the case. I just looked at their match list the other day, and most of the like top 5 was California, where they went to residency. So yeah, I think overall your application isn't bad. There may be a question of your clinical experience, your shadowing, just lack of that connection in your writing.
Yeah. Looking back on it, I could definitely see that.
Any other questions?
I think that was it. Yeah, I really appreciated you going through this with me. It was really helpful.
You're welcome.